Minor.
Good afternoon, Madam President. Madam President, I have a couple of questions, if I might, through you to the Chairman of the Finance Committee.
Please proceed. Senator Fonfara, prepare yourself.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, in section number 1 of the bill, I was listening intently to the back and forth between the ranking member and yourself, and I wanted to be sure, to the extent I guess you're sure, we've got a fiscal note that I think makes a representation of what the revenue might be for individuals that currently work in New York, and but for us providing this credit, they would have to pay not only to Connecticut, but theoretically some other number to the state of New York. Am I correct? Through you.
Senator Fonfara.
Through you, Madam President. Yes, as the complicated New York convenience of the employer rule, which I struggle to understand, much less agree with, is and has been in place prior to COVID, makes it very, very difficult for a Connecticut resident working in New York to ever be able to claim an exemption from their tax, to ever be able, in essence, ever to be able to claim that they are working from home by necessity. And so that notwithstanding, you're right that if Connecticut were able to and should be able to recognize those workers who are working remotely or from home now in Connecticut, most of those, I assume, are working exclusively from home now. As I said in my opening remarks, there are many employers who are prohibiting their employees from doing so, from working on site. My daughter, who lives in New York, works in New York, is not able to go to, she has nowhere to go. She's not able, now she's not, does not fall under this situation, but to shed some light, personal experience on this issue, like so many Connecticut residents who work in New York, they're unable, even if they wanted to go to their workplace in New York State. And so the potential revenue opportunity is significant for Connecticut that we're foregoing because of the interpretation by New York, which again extends beyond COVID, although this brings even more attention to it because of the restriction and the prohibition by employers. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Fonfara. Senator Minor.
Thank you, Madam President. Earlier, a gentleman spoke about standing up to bullies. I would hardly categorize this bill as one that stands up to bullies. This is a bill that takes taxpayers' money from Connecticut, continues to send it to New York, even though our constituents didn't go to New York. And we are, in my mind, actually rewarding the bully. If we really wanted to take on the bully, we would have jointly signed a letter to the Attorney General and said, get in the game. Get in the game. Represent the state of Connecticut. Take the bully on. Let's stand up to the state of New York that is not entitled to this revenue, at least from the point in which the convenient rule occurred and said, you can work from home. But that's not what we're doing here. What we're doing here, under the guise of an emergency, is we've developed a train. That's what we got. We got a train. We don't have one section of a bill that deals with a significant tax problem on the 15th of April. It's not an emergency today. It's an emergency on the 15th of April. The gentleman used the word notwithstanding. I think he and I have been around here about as long as each other, and that is a word that shows up almost at the most inconvenient times. because he also said honoring our commitments. You know, what are we honoring? What are we honoring in this bill? We're honoring an obligation to defend our Connecticut residents, I guess. Is there anything in this bill, Madam President, that obligates Connecticut taxpayers to pay the state of Connecticut if the court decides in their favor? Or is a credit a credit, and for the year in which we're offering the credit, is it theirs? Are the people that earn on average about $400,000 a year going to be tax-free, both to the state of New York and the state of Connecticut, should they prevail in that decision through you, Madam President?
Thank you. Senator Fonfara.
Through you, Madam President, regarding the first point or part of your question, I agree that that the language could be stronger with respect to the challenge. We have, our Attorney General has joined the amicus brief in support, which I believe would address New York as well if the court, A, were to hear the case, and B, find in favor of New Hampshire. So in that regard, and I've read the brief, and this is with respect to New Jersey and other states as well who have joined on this. With respect to your second point, I've thought about this. I don't know the answer of how that would come down with respect to revenue. Would we ever recover this lost revenue? My inquiry had not led to greatly informing me in that regard. I'll just say that I don't know that we're done, or do we have to be done with respect to this. This certainly addresses the immediacy of the issue that people are facing come April 15th. Does that mean we can't address some of the issues not covered here in the remainder of the session? No. And I'm not adverse to that. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Fonfara. Senator Minor.
Thank you, Madam President. I thank the gentleman for his answer. Madam President, back to the issue of emergency. There is an emergency in the state of Connecticut. The emergency currently in front of the state of Connecticut, COVID aside, is that the governor has put forth a budget that's not balanced. It's not balanced. The governor appropriates $1.7 billion over 2 years that comes out of the rainy day fund or out of some gift from the federal government that's not yet identified. So we don't have a balanced budget. There is not a balanced budget in front of the Finance Committee. There's not a balanced budget against the Appropriations Committee. So in every section of this bill, when we make these decisions, we make them against the backdrop of a whole, a significant hole, not a little hole, not a little hole that you cover with a word like a lapse, maybe 50 million, maybe 100 million. It's $1.7 billion. The budget depends on $400 additional million to balance ECS. $400 million to balance ECS, over and above the $1.7 billion. The governor's got some revenue ideas. Conveyance tax, fuel tax, mileage tax, marijuana tax, all of which are currently expended. They're part of the budget. That's the emergency. If we had an emergency certified bill, we'd be talking about the total budget, not about these ideas. And they have merit. Section 2 of the bill talks about us forgiving the debt that we assigned to people when they needed us most. I think that number is somewhere between $13 million and $18 million, depending on who you talk to. I don't personally have a problem with that. Against the backdrop of everything else, we should be having that conversation against the backdrop of everything else, not on its own. It's not right to have it on its own, especially when the budget's not balanced. I don't have a problem forgiving that debt. I couldn't imagine trying to sit across the table at a bank and refinance a house with a lien when you know just the savings in the interest rate would help you get farther in life. Sign me up on the list that has no problem with doing away with that. But you can't do it this way. It's become part of the train. There is no emergency with any one of these things today. It's just something that got going. So I think we all should have a lot of questions about what the implications of Section 1 are. I don't want people being doubly taxed. But in a chamber where I've heard people talk about taking on bullies year after year after year, the biggest bully in New England, and I guess New York's not technically part of New England, is in New York. And he should be taken on. I worry about the people from my district that actually commuted into the heart of New York when COVID was at its worst, hour by hour, day by day, and really, really took a risk with their life. Those people worked every day and know they have to pay a tax. Madam President, for whatever reason, Section 3 is before us, and I do believe the gentleman that the introducer has a sincere interest in trying to make certain parts of Connecticut more affordable, more financially manageable. I understand the purpose for which this bill is before us. But once again, Madam President, Section 3 is before us under the backdrop of a non-balanced budget, and certainly with no revenue to pay for it. Why this additional potential obligation didn't go to the Appropriations Committee is beyond me. That's the least of the emergencies in this bill. We could have a conversation about pilot payment. We could have a conversation about pilot payment along with personal needs allowance. We could have a conversation about pilot payment over more money for mental health. We could have a conversation about the pilot payment about you name it. But in fairness to the people that serve on that committee, we're not having it. Not only are we not having it, we're tying their hands with this bill. And we're tying the hands at least to the tune of $5 million, as was discussed here already. Why? Because no matter what, when this bill becomes law, the city of Bridgeport gets $5 million. That's what it says. Madam President, as I said earlier, I think we should step away from those lien obligations. I'd be happy to vote on a bill that does that. I think we've got some time to take care of Section 1. I'm not convinced it's an emergency. I suspect people that are sitting at home watching this, they'd say, if you had to pay double taxes, you'd call it an emergency. And I get that point. But there are a lot of things that can happen, and the unknowns in Section 1, I think, are problematic. But Section 3, to my mind, Madam President, are pretty clear-cut. Unfortunately, I don't think this really is about how we honor commitments. Unfortunately, unless this budget ends up with another $100+ million, we can't hold people harmless. Not under the new formula. It obligates us to raise a tax or cut another expenditure. And for that reason, I think this should be part of a conversation in the Appropriations Committee. I think it should be something that we deliberate beyond today. And for that reason, Madam President, the clerk has an amendment, LCO 4289. I would ask him to call the amendment, and I'd be allowed to summarize.
Mr. Clerk.
LCO number 4289, Senate Schedule A.
Senator Minor.
Thank you, Madam President. What the amendment does is it strikes sections 5 through 8 and renumbers the internal references accordingly. I am absolutely committed to have a conversation about pilot. Absolutely. Tell me where, when, what day, as an individual issue. Let's have that conversation. Let's talk about how we're going to fund it. Let's be honest. Let's be intellectually honest about how we're going to fund that idea. Maybe it should be a tax on things that we don't currently tax. You folks think you're the only ones that get letters from constituents saying, why aren't we taxing this or why aren't we taxing that? I'll have that conversation. I'll participate in that deliberation. You might be surprised at my answer. I do honestly understand the dilemma that larger communities seem to find themselves in. I might have a lot of reasons for why they're there. You may not agree with me, but we can have that conversation. So, Madam President, I move the amendment, and I ask that when the vote be taken, it be taken by roll call.
Thank you, sir. Senator Fonfara, will you remark further?
Thank you, Madam President. I rise in opposition to the amendment. Madam President, the good Senator Minor has indicated the amount of time that we have spent together in both chambers, and I have not only great admiration, but fond memories of our years together. And I enjoy listening to him in his articulation. Always have. Today, no exception. But as is true for every one of us, what is a priority for me may not be for you. What may be important to you may not be for me. And that is so true given the various places that we come from to get here. But there's another reality that's before us, and that is the unknown. The unknown, just like 1 year ago, almost 1 year ago, that we were moving along in session, and then it came to a screeching halt. Almost exactly 1 year ago. Never to enter the building again except for a special session. Something we thought was going to be a 2-week hiatus turned into a year. And things really haven't changed. And we have the specter of variants of COVID. We don't know in a week from now, a month from now, 2 months from now, what the status of that will be and what our behaviors will be then and our ability to even come into this building. So in that regard, an emergency certified bill doesn't look so out of order. And this opportunity addresses, again, maybe not a priority of everyone in this chamber. I think the vote today will reflect that. But it is the priority of the governor. It is a priority of a number of legislators. Some parts may be in Section 1. I think if truth be told, that a good number of folks in this chamber want to see Section 1. But again, that goes to how different our priorities may be. Some communities Section 3 is critical, absolutely critical, long overdue. Never mind, is it not too early, it's too late. So for those reasons, Madam President, I urge that the Chamber defeat the amendment and allow us to move forward with this bill. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Fonfara. Will you remark further on the amendment that is before the chamber? Senator Formica.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise in support of the amendment, and I rise in support of the amendment really for one reason, and one reason only. With all due respect to what I've heard around the circle today, these are three different bills today, and in my view should have been treated three different ways. I am in support of some, but I think they need to either stand or fail on their own merits, and I think that this amendment begins that process. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Formica. Will you remark further on the amendment? If not, Mr. Clerk, if you would kindly call the roll, and I will open the machine for a vote on the amendment.
Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate. An immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate on LCO 4289. Immediate roll call vote has been ordered. Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate on LCO 4289. Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate. LCO number 4289. Immediate roll call vote in the Senate.
Have all the senators voted? Have all the senators voted? We will close the vote, and I will announce that Senator Flexer has voted in the negative, and Senator Anwar has voted in the negative. And Mr. Clerk, if you could kindly call the tally, please.
LCO number 4289, total number voting 35, total number voting yay 12, total voting nay 23, absent not voting 0.
And the amendment fails. Will you remark further on the bill that is before the chamber? Will you remark further, Senator Austin?
Thank you very much, Madam President. And I rise to talk about the underlying bill, but I would first like